and I love you. In fact, in my last encounter with Lorna Newton Adams, that's what the words that she said to me, and that came to mind during the song was, "These flowers are for her." Her memorial I officiated at yesterday, and the room was just filled with that. Because that if there was a theme to her life, for those of you who knew her, she was a member of the center before I came. And the theme of her life was, "I love you." Yeah, so it's very fitting, very beautiful. And also a very wonderful, heart-opening introduction for our topic this month. We're talking about forgiveness as a spiritual practice, as you heard. And the question I've been working on is, how can I forgive the unforgivable, let alone forget it? Is there even such a possibility? Is there such a thing? And when I think about that, what comes to mind are extreme situations. As I was preparing, I thought back to the incident with the Amish community in 2006, at the shooting in the school. Some of you will remember that. It was in Lancaster County, I believe, in Pennsylvania, or more recently in Newtown or in Colorado, any one of those. Because for those of us, even for those of us who are deeply convinced of the goodness of all life, the stories of these shootings presents for us a dark and challenging question. How can any of this be described as good? And one of the questions in the free booklet that we gave away on Wednesday evening for all of those who were in attendance, Forgiveness as a Spiritual Practice, and now we have it available in the bookstore too. One of the questions in it is, what suggestions would you give to someone who's trying to forgive the unforgivable? And as I sat with that and noticed everything that came up in me, I thought to post it on our center's website and also on Facebook. And what happened was that it prompted some really rich, sincerely thoughtful comments from the people who frequent those places. And among the comments, I saw that there were my own questions, and it reflected some of my own thoughts and my own pondering. And so I brought some of the comments along for us to consider. Like, for example, what happened? Oh, there we go. DS wrote, "I have no doubt that the parents of the victims have at their disposal every spiritual and psychological tool for forgiveness available, and even knowing that forgiveness is in their own best interest, will still be unable to do so. What could we say that wouldn't sound like a platitude in the face of such unforgivable acts?" Well, I don't know if they will or won't be able to do so. That part I don't know. But what I do know is that I wouldn't dare to offer a platitude in the situations that I just mentioned. Absolutely. In fact, as I thought about it, I wouldn't want to say anything. Not without first listening deeply and mindfully and carefully. As one of the other commenters mentioned, A.H. wrote, "I wouldn't be suggesting anything. I'd be listening to their hurt heart, and then if they did ask, I'd suggest that they accept their feelings, that the unforgivable had actually happened. And then I'd ask them what they wanted me." And I found myself nodding with agreement as I read through that, because I think that matches me. I would just be still. With all the humility that comes when we face the unfathomable complexity of life and the fragile nature of what it means to be a human being on this journey. And if the time came, I would offer my love to the individual or to the family, but in the gentlest and most uninvasive way I could possibly find. Our music director, Christopher Fritchie, he just recently had LASIK eye surgery. And as he was telling me about it, I thought to myself, you know what? Forgiveness is like eye surgery. You know? Because in order for them to be able to do that microscopic incision, well, you've got to go in very, very carefully. And the eye has to be very, very still. I know it's a very graphic image, but I thought about that because whenever I bring forgiveness up, whether it's in a classroom or in this room or on an online forum, the temperature of the discussion changes. And it is very, very easy to get burned or to cause a wreck. And you've got to proceed very, very carefully with respect and with mindfulness and with tolerance. Otherwise, you can cause terrible damage. And I think that where people crash into each other and burn is when they encounter inflexible ideas about what forgiveness is and how it should be achieved and what it means and what it feels like. Or when, on the other hand, they're told what the benefits of forgiveness are, and they understand that, and yet they still cannot separate from the idea that forgiving means letting the unforgivable act be okay. And they can't unhook the two things. And they find themselves in a position where they cannot forgive, they cannot forget, and they don't feel good about any part of it. And you have to go very slowly with that. When the 2006 shootings happened in Pennsylvania in that Amish community, I was traumatized by it, as much of the population was. And I found myself wondering how to make sense of it. And that's one of the things we struggle with. Trying to make sense, trying to find meaning, and it's very difficult to do that when we are traumatized. And yet that's the time when we most want an explanation that will reveal meaning. It's a paradox. And sometimes it takes a long, long time to see if there was there any hidden meaning in that tragedy. Many, many years need to pass sometimes before we can look at it to see if there was anything of value in it. And even so, to call it good at all doesn't feel right and can be a disservice to the people involved directly whose lives may have been permanently changed by the event. After all, who can listen to the story of the Holocaust or apartheid or our nation's history with slavery and call it good or call it okay or call it acceptable? One commenter, LT, said, "Forgiveness is not agreeing that what was done is okay, acceptable, or right. Forgiveness, however, is making peace that it happened, it did happen, and living well still." See, making peace, to me it means is acknowledging what happened, acknowledging the full scope of what happened, and living still living even well. And how do you do that? How do you acknowledge fully what happened and how do you make peace with it? That's the question. And one of the commenters offers a powerful strategy for how to do that may come as a surprise to some. And it's this: don't try forgiving. Aim for something else completely. In fact, turn entirely into a different direction. Here's how K.H. writes it. I think of the unforgivable in the extreme, like the movie Sophie's Choice. When a heart has been so broken by circumstance, I believe that forgiveness is not what we steer the person or ourselves to, but rather to loving in all the other parts of life where it still is possible. And over time, the loving and being loved will hopefully put so much softness between the evolved present and the original offense that it too eventually softens. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. And I'm thinking about the lyric in that song, love is our deepest truth. And here the suggestion is for us to turn to that deep truth and to trust it to do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. To let love be your goal. To let love evolve your present moment. To let love be your only concern. I really want to take that to heart. I want to try and say it even in a different way, like this. Forgiveness is not necessarily achieved by aiming at that state called forgiven for all of the difficulties that we've mentioned. No, rather, forgiveness sometimes arrives when we aim at that state called loved. And we aim at it with as much patience as we are capable of, and as much kindness as we can, and much generosity as we can. And it comes on its own schedule. As E.E. said, sometimes getting to the place of forgiveness of the unforgivable takes time. For me personally, it took 50 years to forgive, and the work did not even begin to start until I was willing to consider the possibility of forgiveness. Then just accepting the thought of being willing to forgive, one day I realized that I had forgiven the person for what I considered to be unforgivable. You see, it doesn't come by force. It comes on its own schedule and in its own time. And I go back to the Amish incident of 2006 and remember an article written by David Capes about the incident, and it goes like this. But before the innocent children of the Amish were called, the Amish community was giving us all a lesson in forgiveness by gathering in small groups to pray for the grace to forgive the shooter, Roberts, and to pray for his family. By the end of the day, some even said that they had forgiven him and went on to ask the nation to turn their prayers to Robert's wife and children. The Amish, he writes, are an amazing people characterized by a simplicity and a radical obedience to the gospel, even the part about forgiving your enemies. We don't know why Roberts attacked the schoolgirls and then killed himself, but the inability to forgive himself and God seems to have led to a horrible evil. And then the author of the article went on to write something that moved me very, very deeply. He said, the Amish people did not arrive at this incredible ability to forgive the murder of their children in just one day, in just one afternoon of sitting together in a few moments. No, they got there after years of practicing their faith. They had been at it for years, because forgiveness is one of the cornerstones of their practice. And it got me to thinking seriously about this year's theme for our own center, practice, 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 which for me is a reminder of the ongoing nature of the work we are doing. We are building a foundation upon which to stand to meet this world. And to me, practice means find time every single day to do something for your spiritual life, Edward. So do better than you did yesterday. Listen deeper than you did yesterday. See through better. Because, in the words of our founder, it helps us to dissolve the overload of burdens which we carry with us now. In this little booklet, Forgiveness, a Month of Practice, there's a series of questions for you and I to consider, like the one I mentioned earlier. And the goal of the booklet is not to get you to forgive anyone or anything. The goal instead is to invite you to think about what forgiveness might mean to you daily, to invite yourself into a relationship with things that have to do with forgiveness. What are the blocks? What are the benefits in your own mind? So you develop that relationship to think about who are your role models of forgiveness and what did their act of forgiveness teach you? Personally, one of my heroes of forgiveness is the Amish community. I'm personally grateful to them for leading the world through their own tragedy in a way that gave me my own courage to do the same. Their gentle, precise, definite action was like the LASIK surgery that I needed to be able to see through my own stuff. I couldn't until I saw them. Because just a short 2 years before that, my 70-year-old uncle and his wife were dragged out of their home to their garden and strangled to death with a garden hose for the change in their pockets. And I had not been able to see through that at all. I had been waiting for this lesson from the Amish, been waiting for it before I was able to say my first prayer of forgiveness. I don't know too many people whose lives have been untouched by tragedy. Can't think of one. And it makes me think of this quote by Kurt Vonnegut. It goes like this: be soft. Don't let the world make you hard. Do not let pain make you hate. Do not let the bitterness steal your sweetness. Take pride that even though the rest of the world may disagree, you still believe it to be a beautiful place. Ugh. There it is, Take heart, I tell myself. Let your goal be to have a soft and strong heart anyway. Let your goal be to have a loving and kind disposition anyway. Let your goal be to be sweet and proud that you believe that this is a beautiful life anyway. Like the song, the lyric of the song. Life is precious and short, it starts off with. And I, for one, want to know that I gave all I could give before I go, before I go, before I go. In the little booklet, there are all sorts of essays and bits of information and questions. How is it possible to forget and forgive anything? And one of the articles says, if you really want to forgive, you've got to understand that there's a big difference between letting something go and letting something be. The article says, a friend once jokingly pointed out that when he lost his keys, the harder he tries to find them, the more they stay lost. He reports that it is usually when he stops looking and lets it be that he ends up finding the keys again. Oh, if you really want to forgive, you're probably like most people in that you'll do better at it with some support. You'll do well if you have a trusted friend or professional who can listen to you. Letting things be is much easier to accomplish when you and I have had someone listen to us deeply and carefully and safely. In my opinion, it's best for me to share my trouble with someone who isn't so close to me that their love for me gets in the way of their objectivity. In this regard, forgiveness work is similar to finding your lost keys, because forcing the matter will make you feel more frustrated, not less. Well, I have a poem for you that wraps it up. Dear human, you've got it all wrong. You didn't come here to master unconditional love. That's where you came from and where you'll return. You came here to learn personal love, universal love, messy love, sweaty love, crazy love, broken love, whole love, infused with divinity, lived through the grace of stumbling, demonstrated through the beauty of messing up often. You didn't come here to be perfect. You already are. You came here to be gorgeously human, flawed and fabulous, and rising again into remembering. But unconditional love? Stop telling that story. Love, in truth, doesn't need any adjectives. It requires no modifiers. It doesn't require the condition of perfection. It only asks you to show up and do your best. That you stay present and feel fully. That you shine and fly and laugh and cry and hurt and heal and fall and get back up and play and work and live and die as you. It's enough. It's plenty. That's Courtney Walsh, and a perfect introduction to our time of prayer together. I invite you to breathe in and sigh, exhaling, letting your eyes close if that feels comfortable as we return in our memory to the thought of our affirmation. I desire to be loved, therefore I allow myself to love greatly, to feel warmly inclined toward people, and I give in the same way that I wish to receive. With that in mind, then, we turn our thought to the Creator, and each one of us in our own way, using whatever images and words we come upon to describe that from where we come, the source of our being, the endless, eternal presence that we call love, or God, or the thing itself, or mind, whatever it is. Today, by our prayer, we are recognizing that that is our source. And so fully identifying with that, then, we find ourselves being relieved, as if we remember the truth of our being, as if we remember our nature, as if we are coming home to the full realization of everything that we are. And in that we dissolve everything that we are not. And we let be things just as they are. For as we find in this prayer and in our awareness, our emerging awareness, the enoughness that we are. And we take courage, for we depend now on that which is natural to us, our capacity to love. We depend on it to do in us and for us and around us, for the ones we love, that which we are not capable of doing without it. So we are returning to our nature. And as we feel the warmth of joy that rises up from that remembering, we release this word of prayer to the aspect of creation that we call the law of mind, so that we are remembered to trust that it reflects back to us the content of our prayer as an experience. And so we are ready, we accept it. And I invite you to breathe in and to exhale into a moment of quiet contemplation.